Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Jan Roller, and I am president of the club. We are happy that you're all here today with us. The City Club serves as a place to discuss issues, problems, and solutions. Our topic today is the real estate market. And there is no one better to discuss the issues facing the real estate market from the perspective of the real estate professional than today's speaker, Charles McMillan, president of the National Association of Realtors. The over 100-year-old association has 1.2 million members involved in residential and commercial real estate as brokers, salespeople, property managers, appraisers, counselors, and others engaged in all aspects of the real estate industry. Being a member of the association is a designation that the individual subscribes to a strict code of ethics and has taken coursework and demonstrated skills, performance, and knowledge in a particular area of real estate. In his recent testimony before a congressional subcommittee on financial institutions and consumer credit, Mr. McMillan said, "Past irresponsible and abusive lending practices are largely responsible for causing the major problems that our nation's housing market and overall economy are currently facing." Solutions for the nation's housing market and overall economy are certainly needed. Yesterday, it was reported that the number of U.S. households on the verge of losing their homes rose 7% from June to July, and that the mortgage industry has been slow to adapt to the surge in foreclosures. The U.S. Treasury Department said last week that banks have extended only 400,000 offers to 2.7 million eligible borrowers who are more than 2 months behind in their payments. And unfortunately, we in Cleveland are all too familiar with home foreclosures. The New York Times in March ran a lengthy piece explaining Cleveland's foreclosure crisis. The city of Cleveland estimates that 10,000 houses, or 1 in 13, are vacant. And our county treasurer, Jim Rokakis, thinks the number is actually more like 15,000 houses. Mr. McMillan was raised on a tobacco and cotton farm in North Carolina and has been a realtor for more than 20 years. In addition to being this year's president of the National Association of Realtors, he is the director of Realty Relations and broker of record for Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. He has been active in his community with housing and community development work and was a past director of the United Way of Tarrant County, Texas, and the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Mr. Charles McMillan.
Thank you, Madam President, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so thrilled and honored to be here as a guest of the City Club. I told Jim Foster earlier in my meeting with him that I'm so in awe because of the history of this organization and its preservation of constitutionally based free speech that I had to be careful not to begin my opening remarks sounding like Elmer Fudd because I was so overwhelmed. But if you sit and talk with your president, Jan Roller, for any period of time, and Jim Foster, I understood that they will have the exact same message. Jim was telling me about a realtor who happens to be here today, who sold him his home 17 years ago, and now is selling homes to other members of the family. We, ladies and gentlemen, these 1.2 million realtors live in all of your communities across the nation. We're about building communities. We're about building and preserving families, sustainable home ownership, and we're not just vendors in the street. In the time that I have remaining, I want to talk to you about the state of real estate today, and in so doing, I will be doing some myth busting, if you will, and talk about to you as well about seeing this industry as I see it or as I've seen it since November. I've had the opportunity to be asked in several formats what was it like, or what is it like, leading an organization like the National Association of Realtors in one of the most challenging years in the history of the organization and the history of the nation? And I answered most of them, if you will, in just standard pat ways. You know, you get what you get when you get there, and you respond to it. But I didn't have a real definitive way to answer those questions until recently, about 2 months ago. I have a 5-year-old godchild by the name of Joshua Ray. And on one of the rare occasions when I'm not traveling, I was able to have lunch with Joshua and his family. When we concluded lunch, Joshua said, "I want to go see a movie, the movie out here in this mall." Well, the movie in that mall happened to be Madagascar. Now, I don't know how many of you like to see those animated films. I do, but unless I've got a 5-year-old with me, people look strangely at me going in to see those. So I jumped at the opportunity, and so Joshua and I and his family went in to see Madagascar. And I knew also once it got dark, it was a place for me to take a convenient nap from my travel. 10 minutes into the movie, I was still not napping. I was looking at this movie, this animated movie, and wondering why. And during that period, these characters were on a flight, and then the flight crashed. Sing no sad songs for the occupants, because in those kind of movies, those animated movies, when a plane crashes, no one gets hurt. So these characters were moving around the jungle in the middle of this plane crash, all dazed, all confused, trying to figure out where they were. And then suddenly, out of that mix, confidently strode a character, which very clearly was a very elderly lady with a cane, whom I'll call Granny because I don't remember her character name. And she started striding confidently up the hill in this plane crash. And someone from the crowd, they're still dazed, saw her and yelled, "Granny, where are you going?" And she responded, "I don't know, but I'm going with a smile on my face and with a joy in my step." Ladies and gentlemen, that's how I began the presidency of the National Association of Realtors in November of 2008. 2 days after taking office, I was called back to Washington for emergency testimony before the Congress, one of many which would take place on an economic situation that was melting fast. I did not know prior to taking office that soon afterward, the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that we'd worked so hard and their policies were coming into compliance with what was needed to fix the company, would be federalized, and all bets were off. We were back to square one. I did not know that the most successful financial system in the world would almost collapse, but would send collapsing financial systems in other portions of the world, so that when I went to Japan a week later, their questions for me was a totally different format than what was originally intended. It was, when are you guys going to fix that stuff in the United States so we can stop suffering? So that is the landscape, if you would, that we embarked on. And since that time, obviously, so many people have lost their homes.